go looking for it. It was in the papers one day, and someone else called me and said, did you see what's in the papers? We think that's you, and so on and so on. So I responded to it, and I think there were many people who responded to that, but because everything was fitting very nicely into the BEE blogs, she's black, she's female, wow, she actually has qualifications and experience, let us give her a chance. My experience following that was the one that I didn't know, where to find the money. I had never looked for money. And again, there were so many opportunities that, you know, going from commercial banks that were not very excited about a hotel in Soweto, to the development banks that sort of, you know, raised their eyebrows because this was an interesting one, they had never heard of it. What turned it around at that time, again, was very opportunistic. I opened the hotel as a Holiday Inn. And the fact that the Holiday Inn brand was ready to go into Soweto was a big test. It was the test of time, for myself as well. I was able to talk to them, convince them that I could be a franchisee. But this was the turning point for the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, to say we think we can fund this. And that was how the funding mechanism came in to making this project work. Of course, there was a lot of work that South African Tourism and other destination marketing companies had done, Gauteng Tourism Authority and others. And that whole sort of last 10 years of how they had made Soweto this environment where we could do business, where we were now beginning to record numbers of how many people were coming through, was another important factor. Was there a market? Was it possible? You know, it was not just about putting the hotel there. So I hope I've answered your question, but really it's saying what drove me to do what I did. I think I would summarize it by saying being a tourist in my life in exile, not knowing I was a tourist, exposure, qualifications, a lot of experience, but also a platform that in this country has enabled us, even though there are still many, many more who are looking for these opportunities. I believe that that was really what led to where I am today.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Lindy. It's a beautiful story. And I think what tends to happen, Lindiwe, is sometimes we forget when we meet you in the corridors and we see you. It's hello, Lindiwe. We forget you've got a story to tell and the journey that you've walked. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. I think let us hand over to the doctor, because flowing from what Lindiwe has spoken about, Dr. Matsana, you have an industry that is vibrant, and this is a discussion that keeps going around in the circles in almost every sort of corridor that you walk. What's happening to the youth? The youth in your country in terms of tourism, where have you taken them? What's the plan? We need to hear your plan as Mauritius. Perhaps there's something we can learn about our youth, because we have a community of unemployed youth in our country who could definitely play a big role in the tourism sector. Maybe we haven't made it attractive enough. Maybe there's something that we need to learn amongst ourselves as Africans. Can we hear from Mauritius?
Yeah, that's a very important point. We should not forget that the tourism industry needs to be profitable. What I mean to say is that you cannot get in the tourism industry if you do it in an amateurish way. You need a lot of training, because people are paid for the stay and they expect a level of service. They are paid for the stay and they expect each part, each level of the stay to be of a high professional way. This is why there is more than 30% of repeat visitors to Mauritius. And TOs love to work with Mauritius because afterwards they don't have complaints. Don't forget, European laws, and in so many countries, you need to contract an insurance, and TOs selling a destination can actually face different trials afterwards if they don't respect the contractual agreement. It is very important to understand specificities of this industry. Behind the glamour picture, behind the whole, happiness picture, there is a lot of work, and work. What we have done for the youth, this tourism industry in Mauritius, has been able to be successful, recognized worldwide, due to a committed staff. people who started in this industry in the early 80s, in the early 70s, 80s, 90s, was a generation that was fully committed. Was a generation that actually, whenever they took office in one hotel, they would stay for 25 years in one hotel. Now, we are having an educated youth. Young people of the internet. Young people are very price conscious. They are actually very conscious about their importance. They have been trained, of course, but they have ambition. You cannot expect, and this is one of the challenges of Mauritius, you cannot expect these generations to have the same principle. It means that, way of looking at things as the older generation. So you find now yourself with, a staff that keep on moving and want more and more opportunities. This is the first challenge. So what we are doing now, we have moved very quickly. We could understand the situation. We have moved very quickly. There are 3 or 4 renowned academics in Mauritius, like Vatel, to the School of Training, National School of Training School, and you've got different academies, private academies, international academies, which cater for a long professional training. But this question is pertinent. What are we going to do with all these young people, university students, people of the private training and so on? So you find yourself with a lot of staff, of people, but the hotels on their side, they can only take people with experience. They don't take people with high-level diplomas. They have high-level degrees. They favor people with real experience. And this is how the reputation of Mauritius is playing a very positive role. What is occurring is that you will find Mauritians in Dubai. You find Mauritians, in Réunion Island. You find Mauritians, the capital of Mauritius, investing in Seychelles. You find Mauritius even in Maldives. You find Mauritius in so many countries because the middle management and even people who have graduated long in university are now being high demand. Let's say for Costa Cracia. Costa Cracia made, a demand for 2,000 staff from Mauritius because we speak both English and French. And the people are trained and they are nurtured in such a way that they can fit in perfectly in this hospitality industry. To fit in this hospitality industry, it's not an easy thing. That's why you cannot transfer one experience from the country to another one. You need to have a cultural background. You need to have this openness to different civilization. You need to feel that whenever you're pampering, you're catering visitors, you need to get proud of it. This is very important. So the youth of Mauritius, of course, we do have a lot of challenge because youth of Mauritius are there, but we have a lot of opportunities because the staff, of Mauritius are on high demand in the Middle East. Even, we sign an agreement with Europe whereby they come and they can recruit personnel from Mauritius for the hotel sector. It means as far as the demand, as far as outlets for this youth, we do have a lot of opportunities, and it is very fortunate for us. The fact that we speak both English and French, you will find a lot of Mauritian staff on Emirates Airlines, and other airlines coming in want their staff from Mauritius. So these are good opportunities, but I must tell you that to move now with these new generations, you need to give them opportunities, avenues for their ambition. And this is the challenge.
I think I'd like to ask Jennifer, just to add to that discussion, because Jennifer's been involved in developing young people through the different institutions which has been lecturing, etc. So I think you could add something.
Thank you very much. I was very excited this morning when Gillian informed us that Our sector has created 1 million jobs in 20 years. I was really excited. That's something we should be really proud of. We've got a long way to go still. And I would imagine that a fairly high percentage of those 1 million jobs are young people, are youth. I think there could be a higher percentage of youth, and there needs to be a higher percentage of youth. But there's one factor that we're not considering, and in DUA you'll agree with me, I'm sure, is that the tourism and hospitality sector is a lousy employer in general. The wages are low, the hours are long. Oh, you know, you don't always get paid for overtime. As you said, your father thought you were going to be working in the kitchen for the rest of your life. And a lot of the job opportunities are not quality job opportunities. So yes, we need growth. We need to grow. We need to carry on growing. Those figures we saw this morning, really exciting. And we need the growth. And it's ironic because the main argument for growth is job creation, which is poverty reduction. But we need quality growth. So I look at those graphs that UNWTO likes to publish, and the 1.8 billion arrivals actually scares me quite a lot because it needs to be managed. We have to change the way
you think skills help us?
Thank you. And in reference, just to add on to the last point that you made in regards to the growth, yes, we say it has to be done in a sustainable way in order for us to be able to continue with the growth. And when you talk about youth within the industry, at UNWTO, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the Africa program, there's a lot of assistance that we extend to our member countries on the technical level in terms of capacity building. We create, we provide the models to follow, and in giving training, assistance, capacity building, this is where we are helping our member countries to touch the younger ones that are within the tourism industry. And tourism industry, as we know, it's transsectorial. It touches different sectors. And it is important for us to have all these sectors working together. And as we provide the assistance to our member countries, like I mentioned, in terms of technical assistance, in creating their master plan, in working on their strategy, these are all the areas where we come in and assist. And we also have the UNWTO Themis Foundation, which is the body that looks at training, education, and capacity building. These are all the areas where we can come in as the international body to give support to our member countries in terms of capacity building and training and promotion.
Thank you very much. Somebody else has a comment to that?
Very nice, because I could see the topic is about, tourism in cities. And that's why I came here, just for me to understand how cities can really market themselves better in South Africa. The reality is that as I'm sitting here, and I've been listening to all the speakers, I think I'm going to leave here still not knowing how one can also advise, let's say, one municipality in the northwest or city on how it should market itself better. Mainly because in South Africa we have a different setup compared to Mauritius. In South Africa, the population is about 51 million people. And we all know that 79% of that population lives in townships. Townships which are not necessarily regarded as being part of cities. I mean, even the terminology itself, it creates an impression that we are talking about something that is outside a city. And I wish maybe if panelists could help me to understand that the definition of a city in South Africa. Is it the CBD? If you talk about Cape Town, are you talking about Khayelitsha as well? And how would you market Khayelitsha better so that you can attract tourists to Khayelitsha and not have them only going to the Table Mountain? That's my question, Chair.
I think, sir, you have brought in an interesting flavor to this, but company, and Pelisa is still here with us. When we drew out, some of the issues that cities experience and the challenges they experience in marketing their destinations, they spoke about the first 20 years and the different things that they would want to see going forward into the next 20 years. And we also had a response from within the public about, different ways of doing this, because one of the things I think, Pelisa, you just remind me as well, was one, we speak of the fact that local economic development officers within the municipalities, they get a budget, they're given the mandates to drive tourism in their sectors, but they're not tourism specialists. It's not an area that they're going to focus too much attention on. And somebody in the audience, I think at one stage, spoke about the fact that, maybe what we need to do is now start saying to ourselves, the largest cities, the cities that have been marketing, the destination management companies in those largest cities should be taking on board these smaller cities and assisting them to grow, because we know where the needs are. We understand that the gaps are actually those skills, the lack of understanding of what the tourism industry has to offer. And I hope that, sort of in brief, that has helped you understand some of what we came out of the first session that we're taking forward that we brought into this session, that says we've got to hold each other's hands. We cannot expect those local economic development officers to do it on their own. It's not going to be possible. They will change. There will be another officer who will come into that same position, and it will just be a rerun of the last year and the previous year. So we've now got to start thinking out of the box. I think it's also an opportunity for a lot of us, and you can also help me within the panelists, is that innovation in the tourism industry is critical. We've shied away from the youth in many ways because they're hip. There's nothing wrong with them wanting to move jobs. They're not going to be as loyal as we were when we sat for 25 years in the same desk and the same, left our handbag at the same spot every day for 25 years. That is not what the youth of the next 20 years is going to be doing. He will not stay for 20 years. So we've got to understand that, and we've got to be able to say to ourselves, how do we work with that person going forward? I think I've helped you there, sir. Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate your point, and I'm part of Johannesburg. And in most of the world, we conceptualize cities as clusters of neighborhoods or precincts. And unfortunately, given the history of apartheid spatial planning, we use words like townships and locations, etc. I mean, some people know, to talk about what is essentially a greater metro area. And this is almost an unfortunate part of our lexicon that we need to get past. And within that kind of metropolitan area, each neighborhood will have some sort of unique selling point. I think my colleague from Germany made the point this morning that parts of Berlin are fun for young people to go out at night, and others are well known for shopping, and some might be historical. Cape Town isn't any different. So it's about saying if you want to do X, you go here. If you're interested in sports, tourism, or football, you go to Athlone. This is where you go. And the second point I would like to make is I think our bigger cities, and I think we need to look at the big places, need to get on this bandwagon of a trend internationally which is called being a smart city, which is being sustainable, right? So energy efficiency, recycling, waste management, public transport, moving people around efficiently, etc. This is interesting to people who will come to South Africa, but it also creates a better quality of life for ordinary South Africans living in cities which creates a more conducive environment for tourism, whether it's domestic or day visitors or international arrivals. Is that, you know, a city that's a nice place to live in, that delivers services to its citizens, is a nice place to visit as a tourist.
Thank you very much. There's a gentleman, I think, at the back has been wanting to add something as well.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to feel and touch, you know, the way forward, particularly in terms of youth development in the tourism industry. I want to quickly cross-check with our panelists whether the concept of incubation, you know, in tourism, does it work? Is there a model, you know? I've seen, you know, incubation in various sectors, focusing on the youth, it seems to be working. But in South Africa, there's that kind of lethargic from the side of business, because as you know, that incubation will require a partnership between government and private, you know, sector. So could that be an answer in a very small way, except for the isolated efforts of various companies?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I think that's going to help us bring ourselves to a close with this panel. Question is raised. Yes, no, certainly. Yes. There's a question.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I have?
We have 2 questions, and I am really running against time. But what I'm going to do is give each one of you an opportunity. So it's the 2 questions from Paris and the gentleman at the back, and then we just need to come and round up here.
It's Ganesh Naidu from the newspapers, and I've listened to our 3 panelists on the second session. Sorry, Ganesh Naidu from the independent newspapers, and I was listening to the 3 panelists now on the second session of the Jennifer and Professor.
Yes.
And part of my portfolio is education from KZN angle, and I was listening to them, and what got me the most was the experiences.
Sorry, sir.
So,
you just need to keep using your
sorry, the experiences as 3 key panelists brought into the second section got me motivated in what I actually have to carry out here from this session to our readers. And Jennifer, especially, and Indiba got to me, where this paradoxical problem we have in the education sector, especially our youth, is getting 40% of the unemployed people in South Africa interested in the tourism sector. This is the crux of our matter, and if we can get at least 5% of those interested in the FT colleges and the education and tourism sector, it'll go a long way in addressing unemployment problems in all our provinces.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I think that's also, it will bring us, at some stage to an understanding how we promote education of what the tourism industry has got to offer. But quickly, can I ask Felisa to come up with her question?
Two questions to Dr. and also to Jennifer. One is around training in tourism at tertiary level. In my experience working with youth on the tourism development, first I worked with youth at high school level, youth from Alexander Township. At first I tried to understand what is their understanding of tourism, what is this all about? And that was shortly before the World Cup. Now what I found out was that, and in a way I was expecting it, what I found out was that to them, tourism is about just going to Joburg Zoo or going to that attraction. It ends there. There is no cohesion or interrelationship between what a hotel does and then attraction does and transport and so on, that coordination between the different areas. That was one. So before the World Cup, I had to fast track those children from those high schools, from Alex, because there was going to be the Football for Hope taking place in Alex. So we used them as tour guides in Alex. So that was one. Now, at Joburg Tourism, we also had interns from different colleges around the city. Now, what I picked up from them is that they tend to be narrow in their understanding of tourism. If a kid understands travel agency or hotel management, it ends there. There is no interrelationship between the different contributors into the industry. Now, to Dr. there, and actually everybody, don't you think the universities or tertiary institutions need to take a different approach or add something in their curriculum in terms of teaching tourism? So that if a child is taught about travel agency, that needs to be linked to the different areas so that they know that at the end of the day, this is the bigger picture. You know, that's what it's about. It's about economic development. That's what we are answering to at the end of the day. It's about sustaining businesses and so on and so on. That's one point. The second point to Jennifer, in terms of sustainable tourism development, you know, I said earlier in my presentation that we had a tourism roundtable in Johannesburg where we were addressing the issue of tourism infrastructure in Johannesburg. Now, one thing that I was presenting, or I put on the table, was that there tends to be a concentration of business tourism in Sandton. Other areas in the city are not benefiting as they should be. Now, as it is, Sandton has a high volume of investment, whether it's in other forms of business, or hotel or whatever, but it's happening, everything seems to be concentrating in Sandton. Now, what tends to happen, well, we know that from tourism studies, the negative impacts of tourism. Is there anything, what role can you play in advising destinations or, say, investment consultants, to say, don't concentrate in that area. Instead, there's something else happening in another area. Because at the end of the day, whatever investment that you are bringing is going to lead to degradation of the area. Then we don't have a sustainable tourism development program. Thank you.
Okay, that was awesome. But unfortunately, I can see that time's really, not in our favor right now. I'm going to quickly ask each one of the panelists to give literally 2 minutes at the most of a round of what we've just heard, because what we need to do here as we're closing in these 2 minutes that each person gets is to say, here is what I believe should be the way forward for the next 20 years. You literally select whatever it is you want it to be about. Us focusing so much more attention about entrepreneurship development, is it about youth development, is it about X, Y, Z? Here we go, Dr. Mutsala.
Well, just to say that first is the people. People is the most important. Then this is a sector we should never lose in sight that it is a private driven. It needs to be profitable. Then we can have vision, we can have plan, but these need to be profitable. Then the other thing is most important. We should take into account customers' expectations. They are paying for their stay, they are expecting a product, and you need to satisfy that. This is actually synonymous of success. Now, one point is that whatever students learn at university, they lose sight of reality because the university teachers themselves, oftentimes they don't know the real subject. You know, this is why we find ourselves with a bunch of people, well, you know, with high-level degree, but that cannot get adopted to this industry because nobody tells them that it is a difficult job. You need to be committed, and you need to give a lot of energy, a lot of goodwill, and your vibrancy to make it happen.
Wonderful. Jennifer.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for a lovely discussion. I'm going to pick up on the last question from Pelisa. I think if you want to influence any type of development, you have two sets of tools available. You have carrots and you have sticks. So in terms of sustainable investment, CapEx, for example, we have environmental impact assessment legislation, we have social impact assessment legislation, we have zoning, we have IDPs, etc. So there's an infrastructure in place to say this is how we would like investment to happen in area A. But the other thing we need are the carrots. We need incentives. So look at your example. You were not randomly. I mean, you were appropriately, but the IDC assisted you to build the Soweto Hotel. So using finance, other types of incentives to perhaps look at what you're saying, like geographic distribution of jobs and infrastructure. So, I mean, these are tools that are available to the state, either through regular public sector organizations or development finance institutions. And I think we need, you need a little bit of both to sort of get tourism moving in the way that we want it to.
Wonderful, and Lydia.
I wanted to touch a little bit on the incubation question. I think incubation projects can work, but I don't think they can work in isolation, meaning that private and public sector has to come together. I'll use the example of either the TEP, the Tourism Enterprise Partnership, which in a way creates an environment for an SME or a youth entrepreneur to have the facility of understanding how to identify your markets, which is often where enterprises fail. People think you can just open a bed and breakfast anywhere in the middle of anywhere without first of understanding where's my market going to come from. Maybe my business actually has to be elsewhere. My idea is more important than where it should be. So understanding of markets, understanding where you can get funding, understanding how to draw simple things like, well, not simple at the time, but business plans. That's where I think partnerships such as the TEP, CEDA as an example are perfect. Now in my context as a hotel, I know that what Gillian gave us this morning in terms of 1 million jobs being created in the last 20 minutes. Wow, that would be great. In the last 20 years. I actually think it can be quadrupled in the next 20 years. And the reason I'm saying that is we've got to become innovative in saying how and where are these jobs going to come from. I heard time and time again a lot of mention of hotels, tour operators, and travel agents. You know, all the typical things that we've been talking about and regurgitating over the past 20 years. We need to look at where the opportunities are going to come from: facilities management, waste management, security management, supplying of vegetables and fruits, cutting them and chopping them for my big birchwood because we don't have time to cut and chop. You know what I mean? Landscaping, gardening, really becoming creative in how we explain and express to the youth where the opportunities are. So that we are not confining them to thinking that if I'm not a travel agent or if I'm not a tour operator or if I'm not a hotel person, I can't have a business. We really need to expand the horizon. And then that's where the funders and the TEPs and the CEDAs come into partnership with the entities like the hotel environment travel agents to make sure that when it comes to the experience that's required, we embody the spirit of apprenticeship and so on. My last 2 points is, let us not forget how important regional African tourism will play a role in making sure that we grow tourism. If we want our tourism to grow, it cannot happen in isolation of us looking out to other African countries and saying, how do we trade with Kenya to create more opportunities, and how do we make sure that our innovation improves and increases over the next 20 years?
Thank you so much. I think, my last little point before I hand over to Sisa is I'm going to leave you all with a question. drawing out from what Lindy has just said about working with the rest of the continent, do not remember that there's a diaspora market that we're also not taking into consideration. Hey? We have a lot of the diasporans who want to come back home, but are we not making it viable for them to come back home? And let me now hand over to Sisangondo from the city of Cape Town. I want to thank the panelists who are here for the afternoon session, and our lead speaker. Thank you ever so much for making it an extremely interesting discussion. I mean, there's a lot of points that we're leaving here with, and a lot of others that we can develop as we go along into the next 20 years. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sisangondo. The Citizen INDABA seminar has been happening for 5 years, and this is the very, very first time that I, for even 2 minutes, can be really part of this. So let me use my 2 minutes very wisely. I would love to first and foremost call our councillor, who is the chairperson of the portfolio for tourism, from which our director comes from, Snomulelo Kefa. She will come forward just to say the thank yous. And I've been asking Councillor so nicely, please come and do it. And she definitely is going to do the thank yous for us. And when Councillor is finished, she will hand over to Snomulelo, who is the Director of Tourism. Councillor, this is Councillor Roxanne Moses, and she's the chairperson of the portfolio for tourism, events, and place marketing. Welcome, my councillor.
Good afternoon, and my apologies for arriving a bit late at our session today. I think it was very insightful and very informative, and on behalf of the City of Cape Town, I would like to thank our guest speakers and our panelist members for participating in the various discussions. Also to our officials for arranging the seminar today. I think from a local government perspective, what we can take from here essentially is our core function is economic growth and job creation. And when we look at tourism, it's important that when we look at cities, when we look at small towns, small municipalities, that they put tourism as a core function of economic growth to achieve these jobs, to achieve economic growth in various, and what we can take from these discussions is how important partnerships are, building partnerships with the private sector, building partnerships with government to make these happen. So once again, I would just like to thank you all for being here today. I need to rush off to Cape Town again. So thank you for participating, and may you all go well.
Thank you very much, Councillor. May you have a safe trip home, Councillor. I may just say, Councillor, we will still remain here at INDABA. May I call my director, Snomulelo Kefa, who is the Director of Tourism. I would love you as the last part of the audience to just indulge us for 2 minutes. I've been looking for a chance to really interrogate my director, even if you sit there, we'll get a mic to you. Just to have a conversation on what the City of Cape Town and also where we are hoping Cape Town can go in the next 20 years. I think you have heard what many of the other cities are planning and looking at, including other bigger destinations like Kenya and Mauritius. But I think we're just going to have a 2-minute conversation so that we can understand where Cape Town comes from and where we really would love to go. Just for 2 minutes, indulge us, and after this we will close and we will go. Can we do this? Where's the second mic, if you like?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We call the director ma'am, so I'll do that. Ma'am, may you please just briefly tell us, by way of a background, as to, many people have said that there is a critical need for us to have tourism department in the local government. And it has been stressed over and over again that it is something very significant. If I have to ask the question, why is that important?
I think, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think many people hear the panelists and the questions that have been raised attest to the fact that tourism happens at local level. That's where the rubber hits the tarmac, and that is where the tourists visit, and that's where the stakeholders go. We in South Africa are fortunate in that the local tourism mandate to local authorities stem directly from the Constitution. The sad part is that very few municipalities utilize that mandate to their advantage. And so many municipalities still think that their responsibility towards tourism is maybe giving a grant to the tourism bureau in the main street. The second part of it is also about understanding how it is government operates so that you are therefore able to operate in that environment to the benefit of the tourism industry, but also to be able to deliver on what it is the municipality is trying to achieve, which is or should be the sustainability of the economy of that city or that
Let's just go right to what the municipality wants to achieve. What, in your view as Director of Tourism for Cape Town, what are the things that you can be able to highlight as some of the achievements up and until now that you can say as Cape Town, this is what we have been able to achieve?
I think importantly, if I can talk from, in a sense, the journey from 1999, because that's when I joined the city. In 1999, there wasn't a council-approved instrument, whether it's a policy or a framework that council had approved that said, this is what Cape Town needs to do and going to do to develop tourism. Now, if you operate within government, and part of your delivery is about getting other people also to do things, you need an instrument that is going to deliver them. Otherwise, everybody is driven by their own scorecards and what they have to deliver. So that was critical. And so in 2004, we developed a tourism development framework, which says, this is where Cape Town is, and over the next 5 years, this is what Cape Town needs to do to be able to achieve the type of tourism, the type of visitor arrivals, and therefore the benefits that we bring in terms of the growth of the visitor economy and the broader economy and the contribution to the region's GDP or GDP.
Okay. If that is the case, then up until now, we do read in the media that Cape Town has been winning awards and been getting recognition internationally. One of the awards that we have picked up is the Responsible Tourism Award. How has that worked in Cape Town's favor, both from a developmental point of view and from a marketing point of view of the destination?
South Africa is a long-haul destination. In a world that is more and more conscious and driven by global challenges, particularly in terms of climate change, especially in terms of depleting resources and also economic challenges, it becomes a huge consideration in terms of people's travel plans, in terms of where they go. So being a responsible destination sets us apart. Yes, we're a long-haul destination, but people are interested in the way we run the destination or manage the destination, the things that we do to be responsible, and people want to travel to do good and to be part of an experience that makes them feel good because it speaks to their values.
Lastly, what will you now say, looking ahead, we were talking about 20 years into the prospects that South Africa and Africa has. Now for Cape Town, what is it that you will say when you just project ahead as to these are the things that you think we need to look at as a destination?
Some of them have been mentioned. The key one, especially that has been mentioned by Elsa, the issue around mainstream. We need to ensure that in terms of be it planning, be it policies, be it in terms of our drive towards sustainability, tourism is mainstreamed at the highest level, not only in government, but within the boardrooms of the big corporates. So that's the first thing, mainstreaming of tourism. The second part of it is responsible tourism. Responsible tourism is behavior. It's about behavior. People tend to use the word responsible tourism and sustainable tourism interchangeably. Responsible tourism leads to sustainable tourism and therefore sustainable cities. And so we need to ensure that that in itself becomes mainstream, so that it's not only about the green economy, it's not only about technology and ensuring that you've got the right gadgets, etc., but it's about all three of those pillars. It's about some of the things that Jennifer raised here about tourism being a lousy employer, that we need to treat our workers well. And if we are practicing sustainable practices within the business, those workers take those things home. So they start recycling at home. They start switching off their geysers at home. They start reusing water at home and so on. And then the third part is, I think, for South Africa particularly, is to begin to look to our neighboring countries. It's about creating those partnerships, and it's about ensuring that we work in concert with the rest of the continent. We are part of Africa. We have an advantage as South Africa, but we're going to lose that advantage because our brothers and sisters in our neighboring countries are getting the act together in terms of putting in place infrastructure that had been failing or non-existing. They are now building infrastructure. In Angola, they're building a brand new town. Huge airport that can take the large aeroplanes. People are still coming here because it's easy, we've got infrastructure. Once the rest of the continent catches up in terms of infrastructure, we'll see that we're going to lose that traffic. So we need to work with them, find the synergies, so that it's about how do we grow visitors to Africa, and therefore how do we complement each other so that we can pass the tourism feet along the continent, and that is what will make even your cruise liner companies, because they look at a whole package of destinations, and they don't just come to one, and we can begin to work together in terms of getting that kind of business.
All right. I think with that, we certainly can say that we thank you very much for the few minutes that we have available to share with the rest of the audience that is still left here today. On that score, I will maybe give you another minute to say thank you to the people, and then from there we'll close the session for today. But for me, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Cesar, and thank you very much for this platform. When we opened, I expressed the fact that we've, in a sense, reached a milestone in terms of this series. It's been 5 years, so obviously into that comes the issue of looking forward. It also brings with that a lot of review and planning in terms of where do we take this from here on? We've just had a new tourism development framework that has been approved by council, that was approved by council in December, and so that will take us into 2017. So where do we go with this platform? What is it more or new that we can do? Maybe to revive the discussions with South African cities networks, because the issues around sustainability are becoming more and more urgent. In terms of the speakers, particularly the lead speakers that have come from FAR, Elsa Groundwood from UNWTO, we are really, really so grateful for your passion for Africa and the fact that you've come to our shows. It's not the first time that you've spoken at this platform. And since then, you then, at the time you were still in Seychelles, and now you're at UNWTO. And I would like to say thank you very much for flying and the South African flag, but more importantly, the African flag and the flag of black women at UNWTO. Thank you very much for that. I also want to say thank you very much for the doctor from Mauritius. I don't see him, but I'm going to find him because I'm one of the few people in this country who's never been to Mauritius, you know, so I need to fix that very quickly. And then to Usisi, Pelisa from Johannesburg Tourism. We've come a long way as the three metros that we've understood the value of co-competition because we complement each other so well. And then to Cindy, I think your story resonates so much to a lot of black women who have silently just did the work, did the graft, did what they're good at without blowing, you know, any trumpets and horn, and they're still out there doing it. Some of them that come to mind, like for example, Usis Wendy, Luhabe, people like that. One of the, you know, black business women who operated proudly, etc. So I really, really appreciate the work you're doing, and thank you very much for sharing your story with us. And then the tourism bureaus, Enver Dumini, the new CEO at Cape Town Tourism, and the way we've been able to work together with them as an agency. And then the work of organizations such as Fair Trade, the passion of Jennifer Seif, is really very, very valuable, and in its own way, it begins, in a sense, to just mainstream the behavior around responsible tourism, even if it's about certification and product, but the fact that it's getting products certified and landing on sort of the various chain stores' shelves, it extends then the messaging to ordinary people, but to buyers out there and influence them. I'd like to also say thank you very much to the service providers that have actually made this possible for us. People always wonder how we do this, about, you know, organizing a platform like this from Cape Town and being able to deliver it. Yeah, we could not have done it without the service providers, the small businesses that we appoint to be able to offer this service to us, and thank you very much for that. And to all of you, I want to say thank you. There have been many faces over the 5 years that have become followers of this program, that have come here, and I think that in the beginning, our vision was more about saying we are all here, we are official practitioners and there are all these people. It's not only about walking around here and going to the stands. And very quickly, it drew attention, not only of the officials, but then the councillors started wanting to come here. We were getting calls from mayors from various municipalities. And then we got calls from the national parliaments, the standing committee on tourism in the national parliament being interested in this platform. So I think we've seen a lot of things happen due to this platform over the years, and I hope that part of it is going to be part of the energy and the fuel that will catapult us into the future of tourism. Whether we like it or not, tourism is going to happen into the future. It's up to us to channel that or to form it into the type of tourism we want for Africa. Africa is a huge growing platform for the world in terms of tourism. And it's going to happen with or without us. So we better be driving it. Thank you very much. Enjoy INDABA.
Thank you very much. To one and all, thank you very much for all of you who have come. The one person I definitely need to mention, which I have heard so many people mention, that is not mentioned, is Maud. Maud, thank you very much for facilitating the session. Okay, to everybody that came, yeah. Next year. Thank you very much.